Okay, so I'm on the NHS website, right? And I'm just looking at the overview of clinical depression. Now, the first line in bold writing is depression is more than simply feeling unhappy or fed up for a few days. Most people go through periods of feeling down, but when you're depressed, you feel persistently sad for weeks or months rather than just a few days. Now, persistence is the thing that constantly comes up when you're trying to differentiate between depression and just feeling sad. But everywhere makes a point of saying there's a difference. Depression can affect people in various different ways. Many people with depression also have symptoms of anxiety. The symptoms of depression range from mild to severe. At its mildest, you can simply feel persistently low in spirit, while severe depression can make you feel suicidal, that life is no longer worth living. When to see a doctor? It is important to seek help from your GP if you think you may be depressed. Many people wait a long time before seeking help for depression, but it's best not to delay. The sooner you see a doctor, the sooner you can be on your way to recovery. Now, my personal opinion, right? When I read that, it's quite conflicting. Because in bold, I don't know if you can see that, but in bold, depression is more than simply feeling unhappy or fed up for a few days, right? It's simply more than that. So it's almost like it's telling you, if you've just been down, then you're not depressed and you need to get on with it, right? But then it's telling you to see a doctor, yeah, sooner rather than later. So when do you see a doctor? When are you not feeling down? And when are you just feeling down and when are you feeling depressed, right? So for me, I think we need to get a lot more curious and there needs to be a lot wider conversation. When we talk about just depression, it's too restricting. Anyway, so here's my view. Have a look at this, right? Ta-da! Right. So if number one is happy, joyous and free all the time, right? Never feeling down, just in a constant state of happiness and joy, yeah? Like most people on Instagram, right? I'm joking. And then 10 is clinically depressed, right? We can kind of or people are starting to gain an understanding of that, yeah? They're gaining an understanding of this one, that clinical depression is an illness, that when you're clinically depressed, it can't be helped, it's not your fault, it's not a weakness, etc, 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 right? But if we stick a 5 in here, right? Somewhere in the middle, okay? What happens if you're sitting here, right? What happens if you're sat in this messy bit in the middle? Because there's lots of different things that can happen and different ways that you can make you feel. Nobody sits here, do they? Nobody sits here all the time, yeah? You might sit here, so what if we put like 2 here? You might sit somewhere here, yeah? You're not feeling depressed, you're not feeling down all the time, but you might just be feeling lonely. Someone, you've split up with your partner that you was with for a year, yeah? And so you're not feeling constantly down all the time. You don't actually feel that depressed, but you're crying at the John Lewis advert, yeah? Well, you don't normally cry at the John Lewis advert. We all cry at the John Lewis advert. But you know what I'm saying, yeah? So I feel like a lot of people in today's world are sitting in this block here, right? Now what we've got, as we reduce the stigma around clinical depression in most places, it's obviously worse in some places it's worse in some places, some areas of our lives than it is in others. But we're getting to a place where people are starting to understand that it's an illness, right? If you're living in this bit, we've now got this thing where people are starting to get angry with people that are sat in here, right? And they're saying, you're not depressed, feeling, you know, just being down is different to depression. And that's where we're getting this pull up your socks mentality, yeah? There's lots of different things that can alter our mood. There's lots of different things that can cause our anxiety, yeah? So we can be in here because we might feel scared, again, lonely, worried, isolated, just down, lack of purpose. And then what we do is we sit in here with all this mess, because that's what it feels like, mess, yeah? We sit in here feeling like we're not justified in how we feel because we're not closer up here on like the 8, 9, 10, where we know that we're completely depressed and feeling sad, yeah? So there's a lot of people sat in here feeling completely unjustified for how they feel, feeling like they should pull their socks up. So we have to be a little bit careful of this, right? Because we've just looked on the NHS website, right? It's saying, this is different to feeling this, yeah? So when you feel clinically depressed, it's different to just feeling slightly low or slightly lonely, slightly scared, slightly down, lack of purpose. Clinical depression is different to that, right? They're telling you it's different to that. Then when they're saying to you, when should you get help? They're saying the earlier the better. So here, you should be getting help here, right? Because the earlier the better. You should, if 1 is where we all want to be, then you should be getting help just before you get to 2. Another thing that we have going on is we've got lots of people that are sitting here in the 1 and 2 department, right? Not talking about what's stopping them being a 1 and making them be closer to 2, right? They're not even talking about that loneliness, not even talking about crying at the Argos advert and the John Lewis, other reputable companies are available, right? They're not talking about that, right? But they're going on about how these people over here, who are in complete darkness and struggling to talk, right, should talk about how they feel. You should talk. Talk, talk, talk. When we're not even talking about this part. Yeah? Nobody's going on Instagram and saying, talking about how lonely they feel. And then if they do, some of us people that are sat here at 4, and we're all guilty of it, think that when you start talking about that on your social media, that you're lonely or you're worried, that you're attention seeking. Right? So we need to open the conversation, right, in here. This is where the problem is. This is where the problem is. Because when we're here, we know that if someone's suicidal, we know they need help, right? We know there's a problem. We know there's an illness there. We know we're in mental illness, yeah? The point is we all have mental health. We're all sat somewhere. We're all sat somewhere. And the truth is no one's sat here. Not really, not all the time. Yeah? We're all sat somewhere in here. Sat somewhere in here. Not talking about it. Telling these people they should talk about it. Sat in here, number 3. Telling them they should talk about it, but not talking about it ourselves, right? And we're in here is when we don't feel justified. And guess what? Guess what should be happening in here? This is where we should be sorting it out. Same with like when you look at physical health, yeah? You don't wait until something's a real problem, yeah? You try and prevent it. So you try and keep fit rather than getting unfit and then trying to get fit again. Although we have a tendency to do the opposite with that, right? So mental health, the conversation, we need to open it much more, is what I'm saying. We need to stop sitting at 4, telling everyone at 10 how much they should talk about it when we know we're sat at 4 and we wish we were at 2 or 1, which you never get to unless you're on Instagram. Then you can. You just post a picture of you looking like you're 1, but you're actually 8. I shouldn't keep taking the mickey out of that. Anyway, so that looks messy right now, and I've done that on purpose because it should look messy, because it is messy. Because when you're sat in here, it's hard to see that you're at 4. It's hard to see that you're at 4. If you've got friends and family around you, and you know you put on your mask, sometimes it can feel like you're at 2. But when everyone goes, you're at 6. Yeah? But nobody's talking about it. So we need to get curious. We need to get more vocabulary. Yeah? We don't just have depression and wellness, not in my opinion. And if you get the low mood and the loneliness and the lack of purpose and the feelings of isolation and the worry, they are causes and will lead and can lead to this. Obviously there's loads of causes and this can come out of nowhere, etc, etc. But that's not what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about this, yeah? So we need to get more proactive rather than just saying that people should get help when they get here. We should all be looking for help. And when I say looking for help, I mean being more open. And that's where the stigma still lies. That's where the conversation's not open enough. And that's where we could do more. So my biggest concern now is that the marker pen might have gone through the paper. And if it has, then it'll be all over the wall.